The 28th Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival kicks off tomorrow, that is July 4th, for a 10-day run that includes a screening of over 200 productions from over 40 nations. So what are the opening and closing films? And what other screen productions are pundits looking forward to? Also, how is AI being included in the festival this year? Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Issues and Insiders. It's Wednesday, July 3rd here in South Korea. I'm Min Sunhee. Today we touch upon this year's Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival that is poised to officially open tomorrow. For this, I have film critic Pierce Conran live on the line. Pierce, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, Sunny. Thanks again for having me.
Right. I also have film critic James Marsh with us as well. James, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right, Pierce, let's begin with some distinct features about the Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival that sets it apart from other film fiestas, if I may.
Sure. Well, Bucheon, which we tend to call Bifan, is what we call a fantastic film festival. It's a genre film event. Korea is, in terms of, there are a lot of festivals in Korea, but there are particularly three big ones. There's Jeonju, which focuses on more art house fare in the spring. You have Bifan, the big kind of genre bacchanal that takes place in summer. And then the big one is Busan in October. That's the big, the crown jewel. It's called the Cannes of Asia sometimes. Although, to be honest, I think Bifan is the nearest and dearest to my own heart. There's something very exciting about the films that you discovered there. So they're genre films, which means these are horror films, thriller, action, sci-fi, fantasy. But beyond just the films they show, Bucheon has always shown itself to be sort of on the cutting edge, a bit of an early adopter when it comes to film festivals in Korea. They've been very active over the years, aggressively kind of trying new technologies. And so they were among the first to adopt VR cinema or AR cinema. AR is like augmented reality as opposed to virtual reality. And they've had programs for that for the past couple of years. And this year, as we'll discuss I think a little bit later, they are debuting a significant AI component. And that's the first time for a Korean festival.
Right, and before we touch upon that, James, where do you believe does the Bucheon Film Festival stand among the global genre film events?
Well, I mean, simply put, it's the biggest genre film festival in Asia. And so that is a unique opportunity, not only to showcase the best Asian films to the rest of the world, but also to showcase the best genre films from around the globe to an Asian local audience as well. It's interesting that elsewhere in Asia, there is no other festival of this scale that focuses primarily on genre films. You know, as Pierce stated, you know, these are the horror films, sci-fi films, martial arts films, action films, that kind of thing. You see some of the other big festivals in the region, Hong Kong, Taipei, for example, even Busan itself, leaning more towards sort of the prestigious art house, highbrow selections. So it's incredibly important that a festival like Bifan continues to exist, continues to represent these kinds of films in this part of the world, along with its peers sort of elsewhere, like Sitges in Spain or Brussels International Fantastic Film Festival in Belgium, and of course Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas in the USA.
Right. And Pierce, keeping in mind what James has just said, what more can you tell us about the scale of this year's Bucheon event, that is, and about the films that look to open and close the event this time around?
Well, this year is the 28th edition of the festival, and it's quite large in scale. You have 255 films screening from 49 countries all around the world, and among those are 67 world premieres. Pretty big number there. Now, this includes, of course, the signature competition sections of the festival. That's the Bucheon Choice International Competition. There's also the Korean Fantastic Features Competition for local films. Beyond that, you have a number of non-competitive strands in the festival that focus kind of on different genres. There's the Mad Max program, the Adrenaline Ride program, Metal Noir, et cetera, et cetera. There's also a number of great retrospective programs. Among those is one that will focus on Korean actor Son Ye-jin. Every year they focus on a legendary local star, and this year it's Son Ye-jin, so they'll be screening a number of her works. There's also a celluloid erotica section, a section for the films of director Kim Song-soo, who of course got a huge hit recently with 12 the Day, and you have also some big foreign guests, including the Hong Kong legend Johnny To. You asked about the opening and closing films. This year's opening film is Love Lies Bleeding. It's kind of a neo-noir with Kristen Stewart, famous actress Kristen Stewart, and the martial artist and bodybuilder turned actress Katie M. O'Brien. It's the second film of director Rose Glass, who made a wonderful sort of like a nun horror called Saint Maud, which I saw at Fantastic Fest, which James mentioned a bit earlier. And for the closing film, I think I will defer to James, who knows a lot more about it than I do.
Right, James, do tell us about the closing film then. What are we looking at this time?
Okay, this is Soi Chang's new film, Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, which hails from Hong Kong, which is where I am based as well. And it is right on the cusp of becoming the most successful Hong Kong movie of all time at the Hong Kong box office. I think they are just a matter of days away from breaking that record. It's an adaptation of a comic book series called City of Darkness, which is very popular. It's set during the 1980s in Kowloon Walled City, a very notorious favela-like neighborhood in Hong Kong, which no longer exists. And it's essentially a clash of gangs, a sort of territory dispute within that very sort of closed quarter neighborhood. So it's been incredibly popular with local audiences in Hong Kong for a number of reasons. There's a star-studded cast, it's action-packed, full of great martial arts, but it also is steeped in nostalgia. As I said, it's set in the 1980s in a part of Hong Kong that no longer exists. And even back when it was still standing, Kowloon Walled City always had a certain sort of dangerous mystique to it. So those who are sort of alive and around in the period, maybe dared not go in. So it's a little peek behind the curtain of this legendary place.
Right, I see. James, apart from the opening and closing productions, what other screen productions do you care to highlight at this year's Bucheon event?
Yeah, I'm very excited to highlight a couple of films. I mean, not least a film from Kazakhstan, actually, which is my favorite film of the year so far. It's by a director called Ildekan Yazanov. I hope I got that right. And the film is called Steppenwolf. It's set in a kind of post-apocalyptic version where society has crumbled, and tells the story of a young mother desperately seeking her child who she has lost in the melee. And the only person who is willing to help her is a rather nasty piece of work, a former detective who now works as a torturer for the police, who has his own agenda, his own reasons for possibly wanting to track down those they suspect are responsible for kidnapping this child. And so you get this very unlikely couple embarking on a road movie unlike any other you might have seen. It borrows influences from Nicholas Winding Refn's neo-noir classic Drive, as well as the classic Western John Ford's The Searchers, which was a very strange combination of influences to throw together in, as I said, a Kazakhstani road movie. So that is one to definitely look out for.
Right, I see. James, as Pierce mentioned earlier, artificial intelligence is taking center stage at this year's event, I hear. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, well, one of the appeals of Bifan every year is that it not only is a fantastic showcase for new films for audiences, but also it's a really attractive marketplace for the industry itself, and always has an incredibly wide-ranging, educational, and very sort of constructive marketplace. There's a project market where people wanting to get their films made can pitch projects to various industry professionals. There are always a number of forums and panel discussions on various parts of the industry. And this year they have augmented every aspect of that with AI-themed events. That will include, again, panels from experts and leaders in this, burgeoning field, as well as a workshop for young filmmakers, a 48-hour sort of AI workshop, actually detailing how you can use AI and how that can help your production in very practical terms from people who are already very skilled in this new industry. And there also is, as I think Pierce is going to talk about, an AI film competition section for the first time.
Right, and staying with that then, Pierce, tell us a bit more about the films under the AI film competition this year.
Well, I have to say this is something I'm very curious about. This is, of course, Bifan's first AI competitive section. It's the first we've seen at a Korean film festival, and I've never seen what an AI section would look like. Now, officially, when the section was announced and they were doing there's open submissions, the criteria is that the films had to employ AI to some degree. So if it's using AI for its scripting, its text, its dialogue, maybe its visuals or its audio, whether in part or completely, anything was really eligible to be submitted. The films had to be quite short, under 10 minutes, although actually most of the films are much shorter than 10 minutes, but there is one that's a bit longer. And I expect the films, looking a bit at what's been on offer there and the information on the pages, I expect them to be kind of unusual, visually innovative, but they'll also feel quite different from traditionally made movies. I expect many of the films will be completely AI generated, but I'm very curious to see if filmmakers are able to employ AI in a kind of a subtle enough way to enhance the film without being like very, very noticeable, without bringing us into that uncanny valley. But you've even there's all these short films that are screening, but there's actually also an AI feature film screening. There's a Japanese anime called Who Said Deaf is Beautiful, which is a feature film, 68 minutes long, screening at the festival. And there have been mixed reports about the movie, but given that it's a whole feature made with AI, I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like.
Right. And against this backdrop, James, what would you say, very generally speaking, of course, what would you say are some of the positive implications, perhaps, of using AI in filmmaking?
Yeah, it's a very sort of tentative topic at the moment. You've got to sort of tread very carefully here because it is still very much sort of in its infancy, and we're seeing AI sort of encroach into businesses of all kinds. From banking to filmmaking. There are uses being discovered and identified by AI everywhere. In the film industry, you can see the potential for AI being used to help scriptwrite. To help actually create the stories, all the way through to audio augmentation, filling in the gaps. There have been a couple of productions recently that were kind of noted for using audio in post-production rather than getting actors to come in and re-record their lines. They were actually able to use AI, which would put together sort of existing snippets of their vocal performance in order to sort of cover over the tracks and re-record lines that they weren't happy with at that point. Obviously, one of the big ones will be in the development of sort of visual special effects and what have you. And I think the obvious sort of ways in which this will help, it will help sort of small productions where budget is really an issue or where the talent pool is small. It will help make that incredibly easy. You'll be able to accomplish a lot relatively quickly, relatively inexpensively. And so that is appealing for young filmmakers, first-time filmmakers, solo filmmakers, or working with a very sort of small crew. But of course, the other side of that is that for the big projects, for the big studios, there's a question mark hanging over there because it potentially means that there are going to be fewer jobs for us humans.
Right. Let's stay with that then, Pierce. What are your thoughts now about the more perhaps concerning implications of adopting AI in filmmaking?
Well, there certainly are a few, and honestly, when Bifan announced its AI competition, I think it's fair to say that a few eyebrows were raised in the industry. It makes sense, and but also not everyone's happy about AI kind of coming in. James, as you mentioned, the effect on jobs is a very concerning one. The global film industry isn't in the best place right now. It hasn't fully recovered from the pandemic. It's been destabilized significantly by the rise of streamers. So it's not in a great place right now. There were the strikes in America last year for the actors and the writers, and while that was resolved, there are still a lot of problems. A lot of people aren't getting staffed or getting work the way they used to, and AI is a further threat. I mean, AI is clearly has positive implications for people who are, control the purse strings, studios and production companies. You can harness AI to kind of cut down on your costs. And that means, of course, you can cut down on manpower, perhaps, whether it's people, doing concept art or writing scripts or doing this or that, some research, all this kind of, creative work that doesn't really get noticed in a big way, that can get, be done by AI very easily in some cases, or perhaps in more significant cases with, writing full outlines or stories. So job security is definitely a fear right now. There's also, of course, the creative impact. A lot of people don't believe that AI can truly replicate, human-made content, and that there's something kind of tangible and special about something that's created in the traditional way. And we'll have to see how sophisticated AI gets. It's probably not there now, but it's only going to get better. And AI does have a lot of uses where it's definitely coming. And it's coming very soon, and whether we want it or not, it's going to be there. And so I'm glad that Bifan is kind of doing this, kind of jumping in early on this AI focus, because they're doing a lot. They're, as you've mentioned, a few of the different things they're doing, their competition, their workshop, this massive 3-day conference. And so I'm quite curious, kind of jumping into a few of those sessions to learn more about AI and understand, how it's going to come in, and see what a few of these different viewpoints, perhaps pros and cons of what's going to happen. So it's a little cloudy, wondering how AI is going to affect the industry. I as well, I work as a producer and as a writer as well, in addition to being a critic. So I'm quite curious, and I hope that Bifan will, give me a bit of a roadmap about what to expect in the future when it comes to AI in film.
Right, indeed. And Pierce, what do you suppose that Bifan can do something more to better engage its audience?
Well, honestly, I think I've been one of Bifan's biggest cheerleaders over the last 12 years. So I'm a bit, I'm not quite sure what I would say to say how they've not been doing great. Obviously, it's working very well for me. I love what they do. I personally love seeing older titles at film festivals and kind of like retrospective programs. It's always a pleasure to see an old film thrown up in the big screen. And last year, Bifan had a particularly strong retrospective lineup. They do have a lot of retrospective titles this year, not as strong as last year, but it's not really a complaint. I don't have anything very constructive to add there. I'm a big fan. I'm excited about what they're doing, I can't wait to get stuck in tomorrow.
Right, then I'm going to toss the same question to James. James, what do you suppose could Bifan do to perhaps boost its significance as an Asian film, genre film festival?
Well, I think that the big appeal for a general audience will always be big stars and big titles. So if they can further develop, enhance and improve the relationships that they have with, let's say, the local studios, here in Korea, in order to secure some more premieres. I mean, there's a new Ha Jong-woo film, Hijack 1971, that's out in cinemas right now. Maybe a conversation could have been had to host the local premiere of that ahead of its general release. There are opportunities like that where they can put on a big showcase that will attract a lot of attention, turn a lot of heads locally, and sell more tickets. At the end of the day, the more people that come, the more people who buy tickets, watch the films, then that's all going to help the future of the festival. Also continued support from the local city council, big venues, making all of that side of things, the logistics of putting on the festival as slick and as grand scale as possible. And just continuing to secure regional premieres for the big films that may have made a splash at Berlin or at Cannes. Bifan is well positioned on the calendar to book Asian premieres of those films, for example, and then also launch Asian films which can then go on to have premieres on in the other parts of the world during award season and festival season towards the end of the year, where you have Toronto, where you have Venice, where you have Fantastic Fest and other big genre film festivals. So it's all about just continuing to do what they do. I mean, as Pierce said, I'm also a big fan. I've been coming to Bifan since 2011. Love what they're doing. It's just make as much noise as possible, be as big, as loud as you can.
Right. I have to say, those are some very valid suggestions. All right, James, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Pierce, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Right. Well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time on Thursday.